I sat at my glass desk, the city skyline stretching endlessly behind me, the sun bouncing off the steel and glass like a reminder that I had made it, somehow. My silk blouse felt cool against my skin, soft as a whisper, yet stiff enough to keep me poised. The phone buzzed on the corner of the desk, a small, insistent vibration that pulled me out of my reverie. It was a notification, a tagged photo from someone I hadn't seen in years, an old friend, laughing in a thread about me. My outfit. That same jacket I had worn to my very first fashion networking event, mocked endlessly for being quirky and offbeat. I let out a quiet, ironic laugh. The Avery back then would have crumpled into herself, tears threatening to spill, heart racing with humiliation. But now I adjusted my cuff, felt the soft leather of my chair, and realized that person didn't even know who they were looking at anymore. There was a knock on my office door. My assistant poked her head in, all smiles. The Fashion Week committee is online one. They want to discuss the sponsorship deal. And just like that, the ghosts of old mockery collided with the reality of my present life. I sat a little taller, fingers drumming lightly against my desk. The girl they laughed at? She was in charge now. I can still remember that day like it was etched in my skin. I was 17, standing in the cafeteria with my carefully chosen outfit, a vintage floral blazer paired with hand-painted sneakers. I had felt proud, daring even. That pride lasted all of 15 seconds before laughter sliced through the room. "Who dressed you, a grandma?" One boy snickered, his voice cutting through the hum of the crowded cafeteria. "Seriously, that jacket looks like it belongs in a thrift store disaster pile," another chimed in, smirking at the circle of friends gathered around him. I felt my cheeks burn, my hands clenching the straps of my backpack until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to disappear, to melt through the floor, but the eyes kept staring, and the whispers kept echoing. That lump in my throat wouldn't leave, and every step I took felt heavier than the last. Later that evening, I sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by fashion magazines and half-finished sketches. I hugged the only person who had ever seemed to see me truly, my grandmother. Her hands were warm on mine, and she held up a small, worn leather journal. "This," she said, "is where your ideas go first. Not the opinions of anyone who doesn't understand them. You'll always find those who mock you, Avery, but your talent? That's yours forever." Her words wrapped around me like a blanket, fierce and gentle all at once. I traced the journal's edges, feeling the promise of something greater than ridicule. That night, I decided I would save every dollar from my part-time job, sketch every night, and never, ever let someone else's judgment shape my worth. The next morning, I walked past the same cafeteria with my head held high, sneakers scuffed, blazer a little faded, but my heart stubbornly intact. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't broken. And I certainly wasn't finished. It was the first day of my journey toward independence, a quiet rebellion, fueled not by anger, but by a relentless belief that someday, the world would see me for me, not my outfit. That journal became my constant companion, the blueprint for every success that would come years later. I didn't realize at the time just how steep the climb would be. Every evening after school, I'd collapse into my small, cramped bedroom, the leather journal open on my lap, pencils scattered like tiny soldiers across the carpet. I sketched endlessly, outfits, collections, even imagined the layouts of boutiques I couldn't yet afford. By the time I graduated, I had scraped together just enough money from part-time jobs at cafes, retail stores, and freelance modeling gigs to enroll in a small fashion workshop. That was where I met Ms. Elaine Carter, a seasoned designer with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She didn't laugh when I showed her my sketches. Instead, she leaned over, examined every line, and finally said, "You see things differently, Avery. Don't let anyone convince you that's a flaw." Her mentorship became my secret lifeline. She pushed me, tested me, and most importantly, believed in me when the rest of the world didn't. There were nights I cried in frustration, sleeves wet with tears, wondering if all the mocking had been right. Perhaps I wasn't cut out for this. Perhaps the world didn't need my vision. But then came the small victories. My first commission, A custom jacket for a local blogger arrived with a note of gratitude that made my chest swell. The first sale of a miniature collection online. Modest, but enough to prove I could sustain myself. Each win, no matter how small, whispered, "You belong here." I learned quickly how to navigate not just the creative side of fashion, but the business too. Budget sheets, fabric suppliers, networking events I dreaded attending. I tackled them all, silently, behind the screen of social media posts that never revealed the full story. I kept my success hidden from those who doubted me. They saw glimpses, a tasteful Instagram photo here, a casual LinkedIn update there. But the reality, the long nights, the exhausted mornings, the bills paid late at first, remained a secret armor. Through it all, the journal from my grandmother stayed by my side. I'd often flip to the first page, where her words were scrawled in elegant script, "Your talent is yours forever." Those words became a mantra, a lifeline in moments of insecurity. Years later, after countless sleepless nights, rejected proposals, and relentless self-doubt, I finally had my own boutique, a small but elegant space where every corner reflected my vision. My name wasn't just known, it was respected. And when the call came inviting me to sponsor Fashion Week, I smiled quietly to myself. I had gone from the girl mocked in a cafeteria to the woman shaping an entire industry. I often think back to those days of ridicule. The laughter that once threatened to crush me now fuels a quiet pride. Every stitch I create, every collection I launch, is a testament, not just to my talent, but to the unwavering belief that no one else defines my worth. The invitation came unexpectedly, a reunion organized by some of my old classmates. They had always assumed I'd fade quietly into obscurity, a girl whose quirky style was too strange for the world. I nearly didn't go. But curiosity, and perhaps a tiny spark of vindication, pushed me forward. I arrived at the event a little past 7, stepping into a grand hall adorned with crystal chandeliers and velvet drapes. The space smelled faintly of roses and polished wood, with soft music playing just below conversation levels. I could see them immediately. Faces frozen mid-laugh, eyes widening as they took in the woman standing before them. Gone was the awkward girl with the ill-fitting blazer and hand-painted sneakers. In her place was Avery Monroe, in a tailored emerald green dress that shimmered softly under the light, heels clicking confidently against the marble floor. My hair fell in effortless waves, and my jewelry, a subtle but striking gold necklace, was a statement of quiet power. I held my posture tall, shoulders back, every step measured. I watched as recognition flickered across their faces, mixed with confusion, a hint of guilt, and the faintest trace of awe. The same people who had mocked my choices years ago now couldn't quite reconcile the girl they remembered with the woman in front of them. I waited. Let them breathe in the sight of what I had become before I spoke. The tension was delicious, a slow-burning fire that mirrored years of silent effort. Finally, I spoke, voice calm, smooth, but impossible to ignore. "I hear some of you thought I wouldn't make it," I said, letting my words settle into the space between us. "I hear laughter about my outfits, comments that I was too different." I paused, scanning the room. Their faces didn't change, but the air did. You could almost feel the realization settle in. I didn't just survive. I continued, letting a faint smile curve my lips. I built. I created. I now sponsor Fashion Week, run my own boutique, and have the privilege of shaping an industry that once laughed at me. Gasps. Stutters. Some tried to form words, but I raised a hand gently, a soft but firm command. "Not yet." "I am Avery Monroe," I said again, letting my name hang in the air. "And the girl you mocked? She's gone. What you see now is the result of years of hard work, belief in myself, and refusing to let your opinions define me." I let them look around, taking in the boutique's curated corners displayed in a temporary setup for the event, sketches framed elegantly on the walls, mannequins dressed in my latest collection, a small podium announcing the sponsorship of Fashion Week, subtly placed at eye level. Every detail told the story I had lived quietly for years. Their reactions were a mix of disbelief, shame, and admiration. One or two tried to smile nervously. A former classmate whispered, "I didn't know." But no one dared mock me. Not anymore. And in that moment I realized, this wasn't just revenge. This was recognition, the kind that came from a life fully lived, crafted with care, and never defined by the laughter of others. I let the silence stretch a moment longer, letting them fully absorb not just my presence, but the weight of what I had accomplished. Then I spoke again, this time with a clarity and authority that surprised even me. I could let this moment end here, with awkward apologies and fleeting recognition. I said, my hands resting lightly on the edge of a polished table. But I don't want to stop there. I want to offer each of you something that I wasn't given when I was younger. A chance to grow, to rebuild, to step into your own potential without relying on judgment or mockery. Eyes widened. I could see the tension, the curiosity, the faint hope flicker across a few faces. Here's the condition, I continued, leaning slightly forward. If you wish to be part of my world, from mentorship to collaboration, you will commit to 3 things. 1. Respect creativity, even when it doesn't look like what you expect. 2. Abandon the habit of tearing others down to feel taller yourself. And 3. Pursue your own dreams with the same relentless passion I had to cultivate. I watched as some nodded slowly, while others seemed startled, unaccustomed to being given both guidance and accountability. This isn't punishment, I said softly, letting my voice carry warmth alongside firmness. It's an invitation to heal, to change patterns, and to finally recognize that self-worth isn't something we borrow from others, it's something we build from within. A former classmate, the one who had laughed the loudest all those years ago, swallowed hard. I want to try, she said, her voice small but sincere. I smiled, genuinely this time, letting a sense of compassion shine through. Good. That's all I ask. Commit, and I'll support you. Fail, learn, and try again. But nothing comes from sarcasm, envy, or ridicule. Not in my world, and certainly not in mine. The room shifted, subtle but palpable. Where once the power had lain in their laughter, now it rested entirely in me. And yet, unlike before, this power wasn't about revenge. It was about setting boundaries, offering a hand, and defining what respect and growth truly meant. I let my gaze sweep the room one final time. You mocked me once, but now, I said, soft but unwavering, I create the environment where talent, determination, and vision are celebrated, and no one has the right to take that away from themselves or others. For a few moments, the air was still. Then, slowly, one by one, they nodded, some hesitating, some with relief. I knew not all would follow through immediately, but the seed was planted. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight of my past lift slightly. Not with anger, but with grace. I stepped back, allowing the focus to return fully to the event, to the sketches, the mannequins, the subtle elegance of the space I had built. Power, I realized, was not about holding grudges. It was about creating a reality where respect, growth, and recognition were inevitable. And this time, I was in full control. Weeks passed after the reunion, and I watched quietly as the people I had confronted began to change. Not all at once, not perfectly, but genuinely. A former classmate sent me a sketch she had been hesitant to show anyone. Another reached out to volunteer at my boutique, eager to learn rather than criticize. The transformation was subtle, but it was real. I, too, reflected on the journey. The girl who trembled at laughter, who hid her sketches in a worn leather journal, who wondered if she would ever belong. That girl had shaped me, yes, but she had also taught me patience, resilience, and the quiet power of believing in oneself when no one else would. One evening, I sat alone in my office, the city lights casting a warm glow across the room. My hands rested on the leather journal my grandmother had given me all those years ago. I opened it carefully, running my fingers over the familiar script. Your talent is yours forever. I smiled, realizing that every stitch I'd sewn, every sale I'd made, every collection I'd launched was a testament not just to my skill, but to that unwavering faith she had instilled in me. I glanced around the office. Sketches framed on the walls, mannequins poised elegantly in the corners, the subtle display of my sponsorship at Fashion Week. Everything I had worked for stood there, tangible proof that the girl they mocked had not just survived, but thrived. And yet, the most important triumph wasn't in the boutique, the sponsorship, or the recognition. It was in the quiet knowledge that I had never compromised who I was, that I had turned pain into purpose, ridicule into determination, and mockery into a platform for growth, for myself and for others. I leaned back in my chair, the soft hum of the city below filling the room. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing in the memory of every struggle, every victory, every whispered word of encouragement from my grandmother. And then I said it aloud, though only for myself. I am enough. I am seen. And I am unstoppable. The journal rested beside me, a symbol of the journey completed, the promise fulfilled, and the woman I had become. I had been mocked, underestimated, and dismissed, but now I was the one creating the world where talent, vision, and courage could shine. And in that world, I was unapologetically, undeniably powerful.